Okay, Vermont farm painting in the snow. So we've done the drawing. And before we launch in, let's just have a quick talk about how we're going to break this down. Now, let's look at the big shapes. So we have a big sky shape, we have a big foreground shape, and then we have this lovely middle strip where all the action is, and that has all the contrast and the colour and the detail. And normally the sky is the lightest thing. In this scene, because we've got snow, it's actually the snow that's the lightest thing, and it's, if you look, it's a very light blue. Certainly in this photograph it's a very light blue. We will stick to the colouring on the photograph. And to show the sort of the undulations in the snow, the different planes of it, there's just a slight value change just to show some changes in the surface, and we will try and put that in with very, very subtle blue washes. The sky, we're going to do wet in wet. I'm going to wet the whole thing. I'm going to go in with our, this is a pretty low chroma light blue, and this is kind of a peachy colour. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, it's a lovely colour. I do like that. It's a peachy colour. And then this is kind of a very low chroma purple, just lighter than mid value, just to put in the undersides of these clouds. And then I think we'll put in these background hills and this lovely bright orange sunlit piece in the back here, and let that dry. We'll leave the trees, and then we'll do the snow pieces, at least our first wash for the snow pieces, and then we'll come back and put some darks in for our trees and our house. Does that sound like a good plan? I have no confidence in this plan, I have to say. It's a good plan, but execution is all. Right, actually before we start the plan, I want to do some colour swatches just to nail down a couple of these colours. Right, now let's have a look at this sky. I do like the colours in this sky, but they're really quite subtle, and I think we should think carefully about them. So let's have a look at this blue. In fact, when I put that on there, it's almost a grey. It's quite a light blue. Now how are we gonna, but it's not bright. So let's do a mix for this. So I'm going to start with some ultramarine, and I could grey this down with burnt sienna or burnt umber. Let's try some burnt umber, see how that works. Just to take that down. I think it might be slightly greener than it is here. I'm going to put some water in that. Oh, I have to draw my boxes. Although of late I have not been filling in my boxes. Let's just test to the right. Yeah, okay, I think, yeah, it's actually slightly greener. I just put in a bit of cobalt there. But that's not bad. A bit more water just to lighten it up a little. And it looks quite blue in the photo, but once you isolate it, it's actually quite grey. I may have gone slightly too grey there. I'm going to risk a smidgen of cerulean there. I do like cerulean in things because it granulates so nicely. It gives a lovely texture on the paper. Right, so this is going to be our sky colour, and it looks kind of dull. But it's, I prefer to say, subtle, so I think I've got some greasy finger marks on that piece of paper there. Alright, now we need to remember that. So that was probably cobalt burnt umber, just to grey that down, and then diluted to get the right value. Okay, now let's have a look at this one here. This is kind of a peach colour. Now how are we going to get a peach colour? Well, peach is kind of a light orange, isn't it? So let's have a look So where should we put him? Put him here. Let's hope he stays. Right, yeah, let's put him here. Now that's a light orange, and that is also probably quite low chroma. So if we take out orange red, and lemon yellow, mix up kind of a yellowy peachy colour. Right. Now if I put that down like that, it's too bright. Oh, maybe it's not low chroma. So I'm going to just dilute it a little. Yeah, I think it is slightly lower chroma than I have here. It's tempting with very low chroma colours like this to make them lighter, because you think, oh yeah, it's too bright, so I make them lighter, but often you need to make them slightly greyer. But I'm actually thinking that's not. It could be slightly lower chroma. I'm actually going to go with that one. That was quite a surprise for me. Yeah, okay, that looks good. I like that. And the final one in the sky. I mean, there's a lot going on down here. But let's have a look at this one up here. Now, as I put my colour isolator over it, it's just lighter than it, so it's probably around a 6, maybe a 6.5 value-wise. And it's a purple, but it's a very low chroma purple. Let me just get the yellow off this palette. So let's have a look at this. Now, let's mix up a purple from our basic. So I've got some permanent rose there. I think a little bit of cobalt or a tiny piece of phthalo. You could use ultramarine here as well. Now that looks quite bright. So I'm gonna grey that down. I could use umber again. I'm gonna risk a little bit of black. Just not to make it darker. Although of course the black will make it slightly darker, but to take the colour out of it. And my black is lamp black, and it's very, very powerful. So I put some black in, just tip my brush in the water. Yeah, all right, okay, I think that maybe slightly, maybe still slightly too purple. I don't want the sky to be squealing at us and grabbing our attention. I want it to be subtle and nuanced. Right, I think, okay. I think that value is probably, oh no, I'm good. Okay, right, it's probably slightly too much still. I'm just being a bit of a coward. You see, if I put some umber in it, it's going to warm it up slightly. Yeah, I think the umber may be better. Okay, but with there, pretty much. Right, so let's have a go at this sky. Now we have the colours. Oh, alright, now let's put him up here. We're going to wet the whole paper, so take a big brush. You can have a quill for this. Well, not the whole paper, the top half of the paper anyway. Or a 12 or a 14, and some nice clean water. We're just going to wet the whole thing. I'm going to work wet into wet for this. Make sure it's got a good coating. And this is the top of our mountains. We're just going to go through that. Our mountains are darker than our sky, so we can afford to paint into those. I'm just putting my head an angle so I can see the light reflect off the paper. If it's very shiny, it means it's too wet, which is probably fine because we need to mix up our colour. Right, now our colour, let's start with our blue. Let's have some cobalt, a little bit of burnt umber, which will grey it down, as if you remember. I'm going to put some, just a bit more water in that, and just come back and test a nice swatch. Yeah, I think that should be okay. Now my paper is wet already, so I'm going to have to be careful. I'm leaving areas where I want the clouds to be, and I'm trying not to go back into any areas I've already been into. I'm just going to design those clouds a little more. Right, now I'm going to leave that bit there. And now let's do our peachy colour. That's the wrong brush. We had a little bit of orangey red, a little bit of lemon yellow, and we didn't, I don't want to make that too bright. We didn't grey that down at all. Let's make that slightly wetter. Going across. I don't want to go too much into the blue because it will make it green, and I don't want it green. Coming down, just overlapping the tops of those mountains in the background. Right, now the next bit, and I'm hoping it's still wet enough to work into, which I think it is. We need our purple, and this will give our sky, our clouds, some form. And I'm going to use a slightly smaller brush for this because I want a slightly more precision. So this is my purple here. Okay. Oh, no. I'm going to use burnt umber. No, I'm not. I'm trying to get that colour without. I'm thinking I should have mixed this up ahead of time. Testing, that's going to be too much. Okay, now, right, I don't have too much water on my brush. And I'm going to go in, just gently put colour where I see these purpley shadow pieces on these clouds. And it's a one touch and done. Now it's looking very dark on the screen. It's not quite so dark on the paper in real life. Over here it's kind of dark, isn't it? No, just a little more water for these ones down here. I'm kind of blending the purple with the peach down there. colour on here. Right, I'm trying to get this looking reasonable. It's not looking particularly reasonable at the moment. My paper's still wet, so I can still put colour on. Right, okay, I'm gonna get blossoms. I think I have got blossoms with those last few, annoyingly. Let's pick up this bit of colour and I'm gonna let him dry. Okay, I'm just putting him on pause and then we'll let him dry and come back. Okay, so we're back. He's not dry yet. I got a bit impatient. But he's shaping up quite nicely. I'm actually quite pleased with him. There's a nice bit of, I like the colours, I like the purple, I like this beautiful subtle blue at the top. I'm fairly happy with that. Now, next piece. I can't remember, did we say we'd do the, we're going to leave the mountains for now. We could do the mountains now, they might bleed a bit, which could be a nice effect, but I actually think, let's do this foreground snow. Now, if you look at the photo, this is mostly blue and a very dark colour along here. So I think we can take our blue wash basically over the whole of the house and the roof and the foreground and just put it on in one pretty even wash. There are a couple of very light highlights in the snow over here, but it's mainly this kind of baby blue colour. So let's have a look at that colour. I'm just going to tidy up the edge of my tape here so I don't get paint dragged everywhere. Right, now I've got some terrible blossoms coming, but we have to live with those. Right, this blue, yeah, I can still see that, good. Good. Right, another swatch, I think. We're going to need quite a lot of this. Now, this colour, I'm tempted to go with the same base colour that we used for the sky, which was cobalt. Or ultramarine would be fine. Whichever one you use as the base colour, use that one. But I want to get it... I'm wondering if that could be quite a bright blue in there. Let's have a look at that. Now, on the photo for mine, this blue, even though I'm using cobalt, is still a little too, it's a little greener in real life. I'm just going to add in a very small bit of yellow just to pull that blue slightly round into the green. This could be a terrible mistake. Right, and it's lighter. Right, this paper's terrible, isn't it? Right, so that's what I've got here, and that's what I want there, and I'm happy with that. Let's go with that, and I think I should have enough to cover the paper. And I've got a big quill, so this holds a lot of paint. I'm hoping this will be enough. I'm just going to pull it on, go through my house, up here, probably back here. There's a bit of snow just in the background there. So a little bit more water and pull it down. And it's going to look quite bright. I think I've had finger marks over this paper, which is bad news. I'm getting some splodges. Right, okay. I could have gone slightly further up with that blue, but it's down now, so that little gap there is fine because it's going to be dark, and I'm just going to leave that there to dry. Yeah, everything else you put on the houses and around them is going to be dark. It's a little bit of, actually there's a little bit of snow back there. Yeah, maybe just a few little marks. Right, that's enough. And again, we're going to let that dry. Now, it does look dark on the screen. If we put this down, then put it up, yeah, our colour is good. It's fooling us because we've got this white strip right in the middle. So when you look at it, we have to try and isolate what that value actually is. Otherwise we get fooled and we make it too light. Okay, another pause to let this one dry, and then we'll come back in and do those mountains. Okay, now we're back and everything's nice and dry. I had a chance to do a couple of chores. Let's get back to it. Now, we want to put in these lovely colours back here. Now, got some lovely bright burnt sienna orange colours. I'm just going to have a little look. Burnt sienna, yeah, a bit of orange in there, and again there's our purpley colour. And if you look, that is pretty much a mid value here. So let's mix up a purple colour and a kind of a bright colour, and we're going to put it through the mountains in the back, probably right down to the snow, because we've got all these darks to go in the foreground, and we can go over our brights with those darks. So let's have a bit of a mix, and we're going to have two pools, I think. A pool of our purpley colour and a pool of our burnt sienna orangey colour. So let's do our purpley one, which will probably be pretty much the same as we did for the sky, but slightly thicker, slightly darker. And I'm gonna go with cobalt again for this. So I've got my permanent rose, and I've got some cobalt in there. And now that is obviously far too bright. And I might darken that down with some umber. I hope it won't swing that too far. So the umber, this is burnt umber, is going to take some of the chroma, some of the brightness out of that colour. So you want it to be quite dull, and a bit more cobalt just to bring it back. Yeah, I think even maybe a little black. I want it to come to this colour. I think maybe a bit more umber in there. Bit more black. It's really, oops, too much. Okay, let's take that out. Is that going to be about right? That's about the right value. Slightly too blue. I'm going to warm that up a little bit with a bit more burnt umber. Right, okay. Now, I think we're probably good with that, so I'm going to just leave that in a pool on my palette. Wash out my brush. I hope I'm not going too fast for this. I have been speeding up, which I apologise for. And right, let's start with some burnt sienna for this. And there's some brights in there, so we're gonna need to leave leave a little bit, maybe some yellow just to perk that up a bit, just to get that brightness. Okay, so those are my two colours. Now you could wet this paper and then put the colour into it, and then it would spread around. But there is a bit of a line here, so I think I'm gonna go in with my purpley colour just for the tops of these mountains. Just go along, not everywhere, and I'm leaving it fairly wet because I probably want to blend this. Just not everywhere. I'm not just colouring it in, just at the bits where I see that purpley bit of colour. Right, maybe a little bit over here. Okay. And now I'm going to go in with my orange. Now that sparkly bit is in here. I'm just going to fill in the bits where I didn't go. And down, making sure this is a nice crisp line there. We'll probably outline this with some darks, but it's nice to have a bit of colour back there. And bring it down. Just pick up that bit of colour. And along here. Leaving a sharp edge at the back. And a soft edge towards the bottom. Bit I really didn't want to go over. I've gone over. Never mind. And coming down towards the bottom. Now this is nice and bright. I might, if you have a bit of cadmium orange or mix up an orange, just for this piece right in here. And then I'm going to go in with, this is pure orange red back here, just to give that lovely fiery background. And it's fairly wet, so it all blends together. I'm being fairly careful not to go into the snow. Now this is going to be dark here, but I'm just bringing the paint down. And maybe another couple of just dabs of little spots of colour. That snow dark colour. Just to give it a nice variegated look. Okay, and I've left a little space there which I'm tempted to go back in and fill in, but I'm going to leave. There'll be trees in front of this, so that should be fine. Right. Okay. I'm just maybe put a bit more colour down here, just leaving a broken edge so we have some sparkles at that base of that tree line. Right, I'm just going to take that up. I'm wondering whether that's... No, I think I was just wondering whether this mountain line was slightly too light, but I think it's okay. Right, and again, now that's on, I'm going to leave it to dry, so put you on pause again. Okay, I've just left it a couple of minutes, and I think it's dry enough for us to work. We may get some bleeding, but I think we should be okay. Now let's put some darks in. Now this won't be finished when we do this. All these little branches and trunks and stuff will go in with a fine brush later, but we want to put in the rough places of these darks. And I want to put in, I think I want to put in the house first, because this is a very nice dark shape, so let's do that. Now it's very dark in there and it's really quite brown. It's not a dark grey, which we often use for darks here. So I'm going to use burnt umber, and I'm going to add into it some ultramarine. We could darken it down with black, but I think I want some richness in there. So just a bit of ultramarine. It's still brown, but it's darker. I'm going to very carefully do the line of the chimney. You could use a square brush for this actually. And just the roof shape of this house, which I'm being fairly careful to put in. Nice straight lines. Now there's a window in there, but I'm gonna do that later in gouache, or opaque white I should say. There's a little horizontal bit of snow there, which I might paint around. If it disappears, it disappears. And a nice sweeping brush stroke where the house meets the snow. Yeah, and already you can see that coming together. So maybe just leave a little bit of white in there. Now what next? There's the underside of this. There's this porch. There's quite a lot of detail in there, but I don't think we need to put in very much detail. I am going to blue this up slightly, and I'm going to put in a bit of cerulean just to make it slightly bluer. I'm just going to put in some marks to indicate. Actually, no, I'm going to put a wash. So I'm thinking about this as I go along. So I'm going to put in a wash of a slightly blue-grey. You can see under here it's darker, but it's a kind of a blue-grey. So I'm going to just use a bit of the colour I had before and put in and go through that tree trunk. Just so that looks as though it's in the shade. Just a bit under there. Making sure that's horizontal. And the side of this is in the light. I think it's in the light, or whether it's hard to tell, but I'm just going to make that some burnt sienna, slightly lighter than the side of the house, just to give that some form. Yeah, nice. Alright, it's drying fairly slowly. There's this line here, which is a dark line. You could use a rigger or a pointy synthetic for this. I'm risking it with my sable. There's a chimney up there, but I'm undecided whether to put that in. Okay, so I think I'm good. I'm good with that for the house for now. There's some extra bits that we will put in. Just making sure that's horizontal. With just a few bits of detail later. But we now want to put some darks. Let's put there. Let's have a go at this tree. So this is, I mean, it's a pine tree, so it's a green tree, but I think I might make pretty much all of these trees that nice warm burnt umber, a little bit of ultramarine colour. Now we want to put this on. I'm going to start at the top, just marking in where the trunk is. And now I need a nice dry brush for this, so let me get a better bit of paper towel. I've got my colour on here, but I'm just dabbing it just to take that colour off, so I can kind of get very irregular marks for these branches. No, this won't be dark enough for the full thing. Sometimes I use the side of my brush. And as I come down, I get broader. The edges are still irregular, but the middle bit is pretty filled in. Just want to leave it just so that side of the house pokes out. Right, there was that little bit of snow there, but down here, pretty dark. It's still quite dry brushy, so I'm not saturating the paper. It's kind of skimming over the top. It comes out just into the snow there. There's that little. Possibly. Right, and now this has got to be very dry, these top bits. We're not doing any of the trunks, but we are just going to put in a little bit of colour, and this is, the brush is almost dry, it does have pigment on, and I'm using it, the flat bit of the brush. I'm just skimming over the paper so it leaves very broken brush marks that will hopefully look like a mess of twigs up there. Now it won't come fully together until we put a few of the branches in, but it should be fairly good. Right, and I'm just going to do just the same thing with this big tree, just at the top, just to give it a little bit of indication of twig. It needs a bit of colour down here. There's this one here, which has also got those sort of mess of branches, but they're slightly denser. Right, now more of that colour. This is okay, it's not dark enough yet, but we can fix that later on. Okay, burnt umber, and then a little bit of ultramarine. It's still brown, but it's a nice dark brown now. Now, across here, we've got these white bits of twig, which we cannot paint around. It needs to be dark back here. So again, the side of my brush, and I'm trying to leave it irregular. I'm not using the point of my brush if I can possibly help it. Try and leave that white bit there, apart from this bit, which I need to leave. White strip. Just coming up. I'm kind of pushing the paint around. If I need it drier, I don't wash my brush out, just dab it on, oh, that's not enough. Dab it on a paper towel just to take the wetness off, but I've still got pigment on there and I can still work with it. Okay. Now we're going to go across. Now I'm just looking at my, so this was the dark bit. I think there's more of a dark bit here. Making sure I don't go into the snow. I'm leaving little bits of colour showing, so that background lovely red and orange colour shows through. And again, just pulling the brush over the paper to get the tops of those branches. I think I might do an exercise on this. It looks as though I'm ruining my brushes, but I'm really not. Where do my trees? My trees actually come up above there. Just putting in, I'm filling in more colour where I can see it denser. Joining the bottom to the top in places. And I know there's a trunk there, just a little bit of colour around here. When we put the trunks in, we can always come back and put a little bit more of the branch detail in. I think we're okay for now. Right, okay. Right, I'm just going to stand back. Yeah. Could probably have gone a little darker first time in. Another thing I want to do, I just want to darken up behind there. So, and it's pretty much the same colour. I might need a bit more. Just to bring out the roof. Just darkening it up a little bit on that roof line. Just to show that house. A little bit of softening here. Not on the roof line, but just at the back. And a little bit, I think that needs to go through. Right. Now this little back piece here is going to be the same colour. It's going to be, I'm going to make it slightly bluer because it's slightly further in the background. Just probably be a little bluer than that, but yeah, okay. Blend that in. Okay. I think we're looking okay. I think we're looking okay. I think we do need to add in some more darks, especially on these trees. So let's go in, right, and this time it's the same combination, burnt umber and ultramarine, but it's now going to be thicker and therefore darker. And you have to use your judgment here. It's going to be darker towards the bottom. And it's really broad marks. The trees are basically going to be defined by these top pieces, and then we'll go in at the end with the trunks and things. But I want some nice crisp darks to contrast with the snowy pieces down here. It's going to be darker in here, I think. Again, if it's not dry enough to get those lovely broken edges, just dab your brush on a bit of paper towel to take the moisture out of it. And I'm just kind of using, I don't know if you can see that the brush is, the bristles are slightly splayed. And it's really quite broad. I mean, there's no, if you just isolate that bit there, you'd never say, oh, that's a tree. Putting in darks to show where the bits of contrast are. Now, all right, and again, I think back here, so it's the bits around the house I'm concentrating on to get that contrast, to show that it's the centre of interest. That's what we should be looking at. These bits towards the edges, they're not as important, so we're not going to put as much contrast in there. Right, around this chimney I think I need some more. I'm just going to paint across that side. Dark here. Right. And just a little, you don't want too much over here because it's not what we want to concentrate on, but just towards that snow line, just a little bit more depth of value. Okay, right. Tempted to do, no, I think I'm good there. I think I'm good there. Right, now, yeah, while I'm here, let's just put a couple of marks. It's pretty much the same colour, just to show a little bit of detail in this house. Just a few square marks to show where the windows are. That's a door actually, isn't it? Let's put that door. Really doesn't need very much. There's just a few squares and a couple of dots. Oh, I missed that. I think I'm going to leave that out. And there's a chimney back there as well, but I think I'm going to leave that out. Okay, right, now let's put in some twunks. Right, now I'm going to use my favourite synthetic pointy brush. You could use a rigger, which is a very, very thin brush. I like this one because it doesn't hold much water, but its point is lovely and thin. So we're going to go in and do some trunks and branches. Now let's start with this tree here. We've got to be very careful. We don't want to state this. We want to suggest this. We don't want to start painting in the whole trunk with, colouring it in. So I'm just putting slight marks and I'm leaving gaps because the eye will fill in those gaps. It's very calligraphic. You don't need much, and you when you do, oops, I don't know, that's going to be a twig. You do a few strokes and then you sit back and you look at it. And you only do as much as it takes to look right. And if it starts to look wrong, stop. Go and do another piece. Right, okay. I'm going to put the basic branches in. I'm going to start on. Actually, I'm going to stand back and see what that looks like. Okay, yeah. Maybe slightly too dark, but I think we probably will darken up this house a little bit at the end. Let's have a go, and I'm going to just take off some moisture with my paper towel, with this one in here. And I'm just suggesting the branches here. I'm not doing a straight line all the way up. I'm not doing every branch. I'm just flicking the brush. Nice calligraphic marks, and sometimes just laying the brush on its side to put slight lines on. And right, okay. I think that's kind of. I'm tempted just to leave it there for this piece anyway. Let's have a go at this tree now. Just small marks, just to suggest that there's a trunk going down the middle. And it probably doesn't need much more than that. Maybe slight darks. Just to give a little bit of variation, to suggest a bit of depth of foliage in there. And I probably don't want to do too much down here. It's quite dark enough, I think. And in here I'm going to leave this bit, but just put in a few branches. And the rest of it will make it just read as tree. Right, I'm just standing back. I don't like that bit there. Bit too literal. There's sun coming out sideways as well, which should probably go in. That bit's kind of going awry, so I'm going to leave that. But that might be pretty much there for that piece. I'm going to start over this side and work left to right, so I hopefully don't drag the paint across the paper where I don't want it. Now I'm just putting in the trunks down here, but very little branching at the top. Occasionally put in a thick one, a thin one, put two together, put one by itself. I'm just putting in enough until it reads like a tree. It makes it read like trees. And then stopping. Now here, there's that one that comes across. I quite like that one. When you're putting the darks on down here, it might look as though it's not reading as anything, but there's a slight value difference there. And your eye will put everything together and make it look like trees. Like these come out sideways. These are the ones where we may put in some gouache or opaque white just to bring out I get freer as I do this. I hope it's looking better. Maybe. I don't like this bit here. Let's try and make this into a bush or a little tree or something. And the marks are quite quick. Right, okay, I'm going to stand back. I think that might be enough. I think that might be enough. I quite like that choppiness on this side. Just going to darken down this house on this wall. I think it needs a little bit more. So again, that burnt umber ultramarine combination. I'm just going to glaze over that. I'm hoping this won't ruin it. I just want a bit more punch there. I'm not going over everything. I will do this vertical though, because that's where the building corner is. Right. Just a few little dots and dabs. Gives a bit of interest. The odd stick. Making this just a little bit more interesting at the snow line. And right, I'm in danger of overdoing it, so I'm going to stop that. Right, that's not looking too bad actually. I could do more up here, but I have a nasty feeling I would go in and ruin it, so I'm not going to do any more. Now we're almost done. The next bit is going to be tricky. Right, I'm just going to put it on pause and then we'll talk about the next bit. I'm just going to get some fresh water, so pausing. Right. This is looking bad. We need to do something with this. However, we still want to keep it looking like this beautiful expanse of snow. But you can see that there are some very, very subtle value changes in here that show how the snow undulates over the underlying land. So this is going to be a very, 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 very light blue wash. I'm actually going to use some cerulean for this because I like the way it granulates. Some cobalt or some very light ultramarine would also work. And we have to be careful where we put it, and we have to be careful about our edges. Now, I think just a slight wash over here, slightly darker there. So let's start with that. I'll just show you how weak this is. Right, it's that weak. It's almost not going to register once it's dried, but it will. So just a very light wash over this. It comes to... Okay, and now I'm washing my brush out. I'm just going to soften just parts of this, just to break up that line. Where's my paper towel? I want it to read as just a slight value change in snow, but I don't want it to read as a huge straight line. Okay, that's nice. And I'm just looking at this, seeing where there's a slightly darker piece here, which I'm just going to put in it's kind of another wedge shape just here. And this is why you need your wash to be so light. So you don't want it to look like zebra stripes. I'm hoping that's going to be okay. Right, yeah. A bit more nice and light. Now here we've got this little stripe of darker snow just by the house, under the tree, and then it comes out in little stripes. Now I'm going to do this, just taking the moisture off the brush. I'm just pulling it out. Needs some on it. Just kind of a dotted line to show these slight changes. My graphite is probably a little too prominent here. And there's quite a lot of these lines on here, but we don't need that many. And due to perspective, they should be narrower further away from you, and they get broader. And it's almost too light to register. It's just a little piece. There's maybe a couple more over here. Maybe really quite broad. There's actually a diagonal stripe going over there. I'm tempted to put that in, but that could be too much. Alright, I think I might be close to having enough of these stripes here. You don't want it to look like a tablecloth. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Any more put on? She says putting more on. Okay, just a few little ones around the house. Yeah, that works. Because they get closer together when they're by the house, and because of the perspective, and then they'll be broader out there. Okay. Nice. Right. And the next thing we have to do is these little... I like these little dark bits poking up. It gives a bit of interest, a bit of contrast. So we're going to try to put some of those in, but... And it gives it a nice sort of lead in to where the house is the centre of interest. But I think we could be in danger. We're going to need very few of these. Let's put it that way. This is my pointy brush, barely touching the paper here. Just putting a few here and there. They're not like soldiers marching along, and they get smaller the further away they get. Just put a few on. We certainly don't need as many as there are. I'm not sure we need any over there. Then as they get closer, they're just little dots, really. Some big ones near the bottom of the paper where they're closest to you. I'm exaggerating this a bit. And this is another thing that you can very easily overdo. I'm tempted to put some over here. Maybe I should put some over here. All right, I'm going to stand back again. Yeah, we could spend a lot of time doing this, but I'm very wary of overdoing this, so I'm going to quit while I'm still happy. I know it's not exactly like the photo, but just a couple of dots up there so we can see that they carry on. Okay, right, now I think we have final touches, and that's it. Now the final touches, are going to be white, which is going to be, I use PH Martin's bleed proof white, or white gouache would do. And I just want to put in a few, very few little bits here and there just to bring out the highlights. Now, just a little bit of snow on this tree, I think. Again, it's just dots. It's not stripes, just indicating there's some snow on there. I'm just going to pause for 2 ticks. Sorry about that. Right, just a few more little small pieces. There's these snowy pieces in here, and I've got to be very careful not to overdo this. It's basically just a few dots. It's not really lining branches. Very easy with this white to make it look, well, painted on, which it is painted on, of course, but just a bit of sparkle in here. I'm hoping that's not going to be, yeah, you see that's very, very little on there, but it does have a nice effect. And the danger, of course, is you put in too much and it looks terrible. Right, just a few on the side of this tree. Just a little bit on the sides, not too much. I think I might be very close to saying done. Of course, and then I'm seeing other bits. Right, and just a couple. Someone tell me stop. Stop, Michelle, stop. And right, that's it. Nice. Let's take that out of the way. I'm really quite happy with that. It came out quite nicely. Quite pleased with that. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful. I hope you painted along, and I will see you next time.